Well, good afternoon. It's really a privilege to be here. And you've already heard from the real experts. And I've already sort of decided I'm going to cut way back on what I brought to say. Welcome to San Diego, my new hometown. I've been here 7 years. This is my wife and one of my sons enjoying the ocean, not too far from here, a little bit more than a stone's throw. But it really is a delightful place to live, and UC San Diego is a wonderful institution to be working in. In terms of disclosures for the entire department, we have a lot, and I do have to say we do receive some support from Intuitive, but I don't believe it affects what I have to say here. So we're on a journey. We're on a journey from the way Halstead did surgery, which you see on the left, to something. Now, I've shown the robotic system here. That's not the stopping point. It's probably one of the waypoints along the way on this journey. And I speak a little bit about robotics, not because it's, again, the end point, but it's a means to an end. So when the auto industry needed to figure out how do we make cars more consistently, they went to a robotic type of a system. When I was in high school, I worked for a mechanic. And a car came in one time that had a squeak. Nobody could figure out where the heck the squeak was. This guy had had the car for 4 years. So the squeak was in the door. So we took the door apart, and inside the door was a bagged lunch, somebody's trash bagged lunch, with a message on it, "Ha ha, you found my lunch." Some guy in Detroit had stuck that thing in there for fun. That doesn't happen now, because people who are inconsistent don't make cars anymore. Robotic systems do. Similarly, NASA, when they needed tasks accomplished in outer space where people simply can't exert the force, they went to robotics. When the military needed a machine to act like a human and go into battle, TATRC started this project, which is called Big Dog, Boston Dynamics, and created this thing that could carry things into battle and, not have a human be there. Now, a number of years ago, when the Da Vinci system had just been approved by the FDA, the American College of Surgeons was in San Francisco, and I convinced Dr. Cameron to take a drive down to Intuitive headquarters to take a look at this machine because, quite frankly, I wanted Johns Hopkins to have one of these machines. So he went down there and he sat down at the machine and was able to instantly begin to do some laparoscopic sewing. He'd never done a laparoscopic stitch in his life. So he walked away from there and he said, "I will never use this device, but this or something like this is likely to be in every operating room someday." And then he went back to Hopkins and helped us find the money, mostly from philanthropy, for the first robotic system that was used at Hopkins. So, he was able to see from that vantage point that we needed things to get us to the next step. And I'd like to just read you some excerpts from an article in the Wall Street Journal 2 days ago that I happened to read when I was thinking about this talk, from Rich Carlgard, who is the publisher of Forbes. And the title of this was "The Future is More Than Facebook." This is based on the Facebook IPO that happened yesterday. And he posed the question, can America go mainstream and transform the really big things? One of which, he says, is healthcare. He says either that is our future or we continue to grow at only 2% and we sort of become not very innovative anymore. And these are some quotes from this article. "The time to make big returns in Facebook has passed. What we need to do is to apply exponential technologies to solve problems." And then he says that Silicon Valley's biggest new thing now is not Instagram or Splunk, but Google's robot-driven car, which I'm sure many of you have seen. And he goes on to point out that when that car was first made, it could barely do anything on the road. Now it can negotiate by itself down Lombard Street in San Francisco with R2-D2's descendant sitting at the wheel. So that now in Silicon Valley, those sorts of technologies are what are being looked to. And I think it's going to take those kind of technologies and that kind of thinking to address the problems that we've been talking about here today. So what is it going to be to finally get the leak rate of a Whipple operation down to zero? Probably none of us in this room know exactly what it's going to take, although a lot of ink has been spilled on trying to figure it out, glues, different sutures, different types of anastomoses. But what is it really going to take? Is it going to be a micro-robotic machine, perhaps a nanotechnology that can actually bind those two tissues together with no leak? It's going to be something out of the box. I heard an MIT professor a number of years ago talk about mowing the lawn. We all think about mowing the lawn as a thing that you push across the lawn back and forth until you get the lawn mowed. This professor postulated, what if you had a micro-robot that sat on every single blade of grass, that had the ability to get a radio signal, and all you needed to do was walk out into your backyard, send that radio signal. Every micro-robot would go 3 inches up the blade of grass, cut that piece of grass, and go back down. You could cut your entire lawn instantly. That's the kind of thinking that it's probably really going to take. So, you know, the future vision might be something like this. This is from Intuitive, and I will go through this quickly. The idea is that you could merge technologies, laparoscopic robotic imaging, and be able to actually see lymph nodes tagged so that your lymph node dissection could specifically go after exactly the nodes that you want. And I'll get there. You can see that node nicely lit up, and then further down the open dissection, and then making sure that the node is really the one that you want again. So this ability to now go back and forth between a tagged lymph node and the open surgery. Is it going to be something like that? Well, I'm not sure. Now, indeed, the robotic device has mostly jumped the learning curve, and for some reason I can't get that to stick, so I'll skip that. But I think we all know that the robotic device for the urologists has really enabled them to jump the learning curve and not have to learn laparoscopic surgery. I think as we train more and more residents in laparoscopic surgery, and as we compress laparoscopic fellowships back into the residencies, which looks like it's likely to happen, we'll then have a whole generation of Mike Kendricks who will come out of their residencies ready to do these sorts of operations.